But that's why people love redemption stories, because they're rare in reality. So don't think you're going to change that person because the statistics show that that's just not the case. The overarching theme here is the pathology is going to return back to where it is. It's a big world. And let's start looking at the evidence and not just the words. Walk the walk.
Women are often taught to wait for proof before they trust what they already know, what they already sense. And today's guest is Brad Beeler, a former Secret Service agent. And I'm really excited to have this conversation and let's look at how this all connects, because I think this is a really different lens. Trained professionals don't wait until something is undeniable, right? They pay attention to patterns and credibility and stress responses, evasion, timing. It's an incredible process that we're going to learn a lot about here. But this isn't really about turning relationships into interrogations either. But we are vetting people that we're dating, that we're married to. We need to be looking at these things. It's so important. And I think most women don't just leave an abusive relationship one day out of nowhere. I think that the truth becomes obvious. Now, often we're lacking in information and we're looking for information. And there's a lot of confusion in abusive and toxic relationships. You're seeing two sides of someone, and often we're waiting for proof of something. So today I am talking with Brad Beeler, retired former Secret Service agent and the author of Tell Me Everything. And the book really is about trust and truth and deception. It's absolutely incredible. So I would love to kind of turn this over to you and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lisa. I appreciate you having me on. As you said, Brad Beeler with the Secret Service for the last 25 years, doing investigations, protection, and a large part of my career was credibility assessment. So in our firm, we would do that as part of a polygraph examination for our applicants. And then unfortunately, I had to talk to hundreds of criminals and see them in their worst times, having done the worst of things to people. So I think it's a good conversation to have, talking about patterns of behavior and stop looking at individual behaviors. That's how manipulators can take advantage. They can use that horns and halos effect by a short-term change, and they all of a sudden you attribute that and you have some affinity bias towards them. So definitely would love to get into that.
Yeah. It's interesting, I know when we're in a dating scenario, it's sometimes people refer to the first few dates as an interrogation. You're asking questions. I think you're just vetting if a person is good for you. And it shouldn't necessarily feel like an interrogation when you're getting to know someone or when you're in a relationship with them, but it can turn that way sometimes. And I know women especially, I feel like we're kind of trained and conditioned to observe behavior and assess credibility. We kind of have to for safety reasons. But then you find yourself in a relationship with someone like this, and you want to, trust something about your partner, but maybe they've cheated on you, or maybe you feel like they are. And women don't know what to do because you're seeing two different sides. There's two different parts of this person. Sometimes they seem really honest and kind, and sometimes they don't. Now, women get trained out of their own perception in relationships. I feel like we step out of our own reality and we step into this frame that they have created, and it makes it really hard. Women feel unsafe. They are told they're too sensitive, that they're making it up, they're dramatic. They wait for proof. I know from personal experience, I once was cheated on for years and I needed hard evidence. I knew he was cheating. Why? And I see it all the time. Women are constantly trying to get evidence. Why do you think that's not always the best way to wait for the aha piece of evidence?
Well, we want to trust our gut. Like you said, so many people, not just women, what we do, and in the protection realm, a lot of times waiting for proof is very, very problematic. You saw that in Butler. You saw that in any time the Secret Service has had a problem, is you don't want to wait on proof. We want to prepare as much as we can. And when it comes to first impressions, Lisa, the issue that we have, we assign horns and halos very, very quickly. This is an evolutionary principle. 200,000 years ago, we would hear a rustling in the bushes. We'd see a flash in the distance, and we'd wonder, is this something that's going to hurt us? So we would kind of quickly assign that from the standpoint of our own personal safety and that of our tribe. And that's great when it comes to first impressions. That's what I want you to think of as far as gut instinct. The issue is that in today's society, it's not built for that, meaning so many people can look at your social media profile and they can look at your likes, your dislikes, your interests, even your dating profile. So many people use the same dating profile photo. They can put that in a Face Finder app and they can find everything about you, almost like a dossier if we were trying to come up and try to turn another country's intelligence source. And as a result of that, they can become a mythical Prince Charming And in that initial date, especially if they take you multiple places, they go take you to drinks one place, they take you to appetizers somewhere else, they take you to the main course somewhere else. And as a result, you attribute that behavior, you attribute that action as I'm safe. And familiarity does not equal safety. And once we put those halo upon someone, we always look for that confirmation bias of, I feel safe. And we almost need evidence, therefore, to prove that we're not safe. So one of the things that I always like to do when I meet people is, yes, I want to make a good first impression. But if time is not of the essence, I want to look for consistent behavior over a period of time. It is very hard for someone over the course of 2 months to prove consistent behavior. It's very easy over the course of 2 days, 2 hours, that type of time.
Yeah, that short window. And I think, listen, abusers really use speed to get you hooked. It's a hallmark of so many abusive relationships where it's moving so quickly. And in hindsight, they're doing it so that you can't see the horns, right? I know chapter 1 of your book is Horns and Halos, and I love the name. It's so true. You're making such a good point about we find this person is good. Early on, they're building trust and dependency, and you're putting everything in the I trust him bucket, and you're not putting the evidence into the what if something is off? Maybe I don't trust him. We always kind of rationalize some bad behavior after we've seen good behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to think of it from this standpoint, it's the same as scammers. Scammers try to do the same thing. Online scammers, door-to-door scammers, whatever the case may be. What are they trying to do? They're trying to put things in that trust bank. If you want to think of a bank, they're trying to put little deposits in the trust bank ahead of time. So when they need to make a metaphorical withdrawal, they have a positive balance. They're in the green. And that's what we really want to be careful about is why is this moving so fast? Do I need to be moving this fast? What's the reason for this? And that's when, if you start slowing down, you're less likely to get taken advantage of because you're not thinking emotionally. When people think emotionally, when that amygdala is hijacked, you tend to make much poorer decisions because you're not thinking rationally.
Yeah. It's hard, especially having been through it. It's like, but it feels so good,
Right.
but maybe this is it. Maybe he's my soulmate. And
Maybe.
You see it in the movies. You see this this sweeping, that's probably missing from the interrogation rooms. But in a relationship, what do you sort of see that as? How do you ignore that feeling?
In some respects, it's a lot like the interrogation rooms, meaning I'll tell you a quick story. I was working and it's in the book. It was a homicide case that I was working, and we had a missing female who was dating 2 members of an outlaw motorcycle gang. One person was a 1%er, 6'4", 240 pounds. The term 1%er is a very old term that these type of individuals tend to be the worst of the worst. They gave the motorcycle clubs a bad name. This guy looked like the metaphorical hitman on a TV series. He just looked evil. The other individual, these 2 individuals were best friends. He was 5'6", about 140. He looked like an accountant. He looked like he couldn't hurt a fly, right? So my assumption was I'm going to test this guy first regarding involvement, regarding the disappearing female. So he failed my polygraph test, and I started interrogating, not from the stance of that he did it, but that the other guy did it. He must have known about it. Let me help you. Let me protect you from this big bad man. And the whole time he kept saying, Lisa, that's not it. That's not it. He wasn't saying he didn't do it. And I wasn't listening because I had that confirmation bias. I was looking for that evidence that he didn't do it instead of just looking at the behavior, instead of just looking at the pattern of events that was right in front of me. Brad, that's not it. Finally, a great detective, female detective outside the room walks in and she goes, can I talk to you for a second? She sits down. She says, can I just ask him real quick a question? And she does. She goes, John, you keep saying that's not it. What is it? He goes, I killed her, cut her up in 6 pieces and threw her in the river. 5'6", 140 pounds, looked like an accountant. It's the other guy looked evil, but I had affixed horns and halos inappropriately. And that's what we have to be so careful about is, if you look at the world of sharks, to use a metaphor here, everybody thinks the world's worst shark is a great white, right? It's mean, it's ominous, it's got these real sharp pointy teeth. And yes, if you dress up like its favorite food source in a surf zone where it likes to feed, it may eat you. But the world's most dangerous shark is an oceanic whitetip. That's what Jacques Cousteau said. It's a little 5-6 foot shark, but it will go when it hears explosions for hundreds of years since mariners have been on the ocean. When it hears explosions, it thinks it's dinner time. And this is a little cute looking shark, but the USS Indianapolis in 1945, there were 400 or 500 sailors were eaten by these sharks because they don't come across as dangerous. So we trust our instincts, unfortunately, too much. Let's start trusting patterns of behavior over a consistent period of time.
I love that. One of my favorite topics is actually like the covert nice guy. And I've
Mhm.
used this sort of sarcastic example. And in fact, I used it in an episode with Dr. Abby. But bank robbers they want to get away with the crime, right? So they wear a mask, they run from the scene, they have an alibi, they do these things. So do abusers. It's like, it seems so crazy to me. They're hiding and we're ignoring the patterns and we're seeing the stereotype of the bad guy. I mean, even the fact that an abuser is not always male is certainly a topic.
Yeah.
My audience is primarily female, but when you look at the nice guy, you think, well, he's not an abuser. It's the scary guy. That's why there's this stereotype of even like women are choosing the bad men. Women are getting tricked by the good guy who really isn't
Yes.
good because of confirmation bias, probably.
Yes, I've had to unfortunately talk to hundreds of child sex offenders. And when you look at the ones that were effective, and I hate to say that word effective, but that's the way you have to look at it, is they looked like the person next door. One of my worst offenders looked like Captain Kangaroo from the TV series. He was unassuming man. He was a barber in the neighborhood. And for 40 years, he took advantage of that. You look at Jerry Sandusky, you look at all these individuals that are very effective. Once again, sad word, but they blend in. They have a camouflage of people vouching for them, people saying, oh, he's such a good guy. But you want to be really careful about who you vouch for. A lot of people that are predators use that. They almost do the same thing that foreign intelligence, our FBI or CIA would do to recruit a foreign intelligence person. They look, they spot, they assess, they look for vulnerabilities and weaknesses. They love bomb in our way, but they're doing from a relationship standpoint, they're doing the same thing. They're creating that dependency. And the best predictor of future behavior, bar none, is past behavior. And I always hate it when people in relationships are like, I can't believe this person cheated on me. Okay, did you cheat with this person to get them into the relationship? Well, yeah, I did. Well, what did you think was going to happen, right? I mean, they have a pattern of doing this behavior. Trust the behavior. Don't trust, oh, well, they won't do it with me. They will do it with you. And once you start to see that behavior, there's 8 billion people on this planet. Okay, find somebody that won't do that to you, that doesn't have that pattern of behavior.
I think a lot of women actually get stuck because they're trying to recover the man from the beginning. So the man has shown you good behavior, kind, trustworthy, all the things, and now he becomes bad, and we try to get back to that man instead of assessing the person that is standing in front of you. Like, we're not putting the new evidence in our mind. And I think sometimes it's like the confidence and charm, and we see that as credibility. What do you see as credibility?
Once again, it's all about time and the ability to also, when there is a boundary, okay, I think that's a nice test. When you put a boundary in front of somebody or they have something that doesn't work out perfectly, a date didn't go according, something they wanted, they didn't get, what is their reaction to that? All right. Because to me, that's the most telling part, right? Because you need to almost have some artificial tests that you put into this relationship, the early parts of the relationship, because narcissist, individual that may take advantage of this, they are going to have a hard time getting away from their pathology in those situations because they hate boundaries. They hate not getting their way. So that to me is a nice little test to kind of throw in there and see how do they react to that? Because that's going to manifest itself. Once again, it's very hard for people to change their pathology.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Say no to someone who has a visceral reaction to being said no to. You'll often see somewhat faster, but you have to be paying attention too, right? Like, instead of, well, he only got upset because, listen, forget the because and just take note of the fact that this thing made this person mad or they had a really negative reaction to being challenged or told no. I think that's...
Yeah, the key word there you said is observe, and we don't do it. We get into this asynchronous communication where we're texting. Texting, it's very easy for me to think, what am I going to say? Oh, shoot, I don't want to say that because she may take it this way. If you do it in person, or if you do it on FaceTime, if you do it where you can judge the body language, you're going to see where that message is not congruent. You're going to see that furrow of the brow. You're going to see that contempt leak out. And that's if you're observant. And if you're in person, it's much better. I say that my wife has 57 different ways of saying I'm fine. And in a text, I don't use emojis. So in a text, it may be problematic. I don't know. I'm fine without an emoji. I don't know if she's fine. If she puts an emoji next to it, I may know a little bit more. But if I see her, is it, I'm fine? Or is it, I'm fine, right? I'm going to know one is going to probably require some flowers and, some sit down time. But have those conversations not in text because you're missing out. So much of communication it's what we say in form of the lyrics. It's how we say them in our vocal tonality, and it's how we look when we're saying them. You want to get as much information as possible when somebody's across from you so that you can make a better informed decision. A relationship via text or via email is the worst way to do that.
And it's 2026, so a lot of relationships start that way. You meet online, you're DMing, you move to phones, it's a lot of texting. You might have some conversation, you might have a date sprinkled in, but so much takes place in writing now. And I think even the use of emojis, you can say something and put a friggin' heart beside it, and then you assume good intentions. And what really made you think that? I actually really appreciate this idea of sort of stepping back and observing, because sometimes you're assigning a feeling or a motive to something and you've made it up. You're filling in the gaps. And actually in chapter 1, I love in your book, you were talking about how nervousness doesn't always indicate guilt and confidence may not mean honesty, but we see that. And I think that, people who intend to deceive can be very skilled in creating this positive first impression that we then struggle to go back on because we see them as charming and kind and trustworthy. But what makes them trustworthy? I know for me, when I got into my sort of big abusive relationship, I tell people this story. He was really honest. And that was something that it mattered to me because prior to that, I had been cheated on. So honesty was a big thing for me. So how this works is I said, I need somebody who's honest. And he said, cool, I'm honest. And I went, great. What's the evidence of it?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah, that's the tough part is that you've got your expectations and they just make a statement that I have those expectations. I can't tell you how many thousands of people told me I'm not a liar. They turned out to be a liar. It's easy. Yeah, the proof was not in the pudding, so to speak. So don't go by just what they say. And sometimes don't go by what other people say about them. Priming is such an impressive thing as sadly, I've had to work a lot of sexual assault investigations where, wrong time, wrong place, alcohol's involved. But at the start of the night, what may have been is, oh, this is so-and-so and he knows her. And it was as simple as that. They may be in the same class, they may be neighbors, whatever the case may be. But that priming, you think, oh, familiarity equals safe. Familiarity doesn't equal safety. And that's the problem that we have is a lot of times if we go out on a first date, I want you to think, well, let me put it this way. Let's say, Lisa, do you play any sports? Or I'm sorry, do you follow any sports?
Not totally, no, but I can take a sports metaphor.
Okay. Well, let's say you're a Dallas Cowboys fan, right? Or whoever, Pittsburgh Steelers, whatever that is. You're a Dallas fan and you're in Dallas on game day. You're going to see somebody with a Dallas Cowboys hat and it's going to mean nothing to you. You may give them a little head nod. You're a Dallas Cowboys fans on a Sunday and you're in LA. You see another Dallas Cowboy hat. Hey, man, good luck today, whatever the case may be. You're in Azerbaijan on a Sunday or any day and you see a Dallas Cowboy hats. You guys are fast friends. You're in an unfamiliar environment with a sense of familiarity. So the way I point that out is when we go out on first dates, we should go somewhere we are already familiar with. I know we want to go to an exotic place, but when we're in unfamiliar territory, we are going to seek the thing that seems most familiar. And that may be the person across from you. That may be your first date. And as a result of that, you're giving them too much credence, too much credibility as a result of that. It's not, they haven't earned that. And manipulators take advantage of that, right? You go, hey, we're going to go to spring break somewhere. We're going to go to some exotic place. And that person is the only person that speaks your language. All of a sudden, they've reached this status in your primal mind that they haven't deserved. So let's be careful about that.
That's actually excellent advice for people that are dating. I mean, I definitely am like, try a new restaurant. It's like, no, go to the place you always go. Go somewhere familiar.
Yep. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about this idea of the way that priming works kind of on an ongoing basis? Like fast forward to somehow we've married this man. How do they continue constantly priming you, do you think?
Well, they are going to say certain things that are going to allow for that. They are also going to have a group of a wolf pack, so to speak, that is also doing that for you. Wow, you're so lucky. Wow, Brad is such a great guy. he's so wonderful. I mean, you can manipulate this in such a way in which I've done it in criminal cases where, let's say we're doing a search warrant and the first person that's going to talk to you is not the first person that pointed a gun in your face, is not the first person that's going to have handcuffed you, but they're going to come to you and they're going to work on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And we are going to try to make you safe. We are going to make your basic necessities are met. And this is science, okay? This is something that's been proven, is that when somebody can get to the base of that pyramid and start reaching those needs, then they can start moving up those rungs. So what they'll do is we'll establish those basic necessities: food, water, familiarity, those types of things. And then what we'll do is the next person that's going to talk to us, we'll build them up. Hey, you know what? You're going to go talk to Kevin. Kevin is such a great guy. Kevin's the type of person where if my kid got involved in a situation, I would want him to talk to Kevin. Well, what am I doing? I'm putting the halo on Kevin. And then Kevin is going to talk me up. I'm going to be the person that's talked to him. So by this point, I look great as a result of those actions. And this can happen in a lot of different ways. Typically, it happens through friends, is that you're going to have that social circle that's constantly telling you how lucky you are to be in a relationship with Brad. And then, once again, that priming and that validation, you start thinking, wow, I made such a good decision. You didn't really make a decision. The decision was made for you. So the overarching theme here is the pathology is going to return back to where it is. It's a big world. And let's start looking at the evidence and not just the words. Walk the walk.
Yeah. And I think you've made this point several times, and I'm so glad the consistency, because people think, no, I know him. And I always want to roll my eyes. Like, how long have you known this person? Because I don't think you do. People who are pathological especially have this unbelievable ability. We look at Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, right? That feeling of who is this person? But if you experience them first as good, and then they become, for argument's sake and sort of oversimplified, bad, it's like, well, maybe they're traumatized. Maybe they lied because of some reason. Maybe their mother didn't love them enough. We assign all these reasons instead of just like, forget the reasons and look at the behavior. Look at whether or not you see a pattern of bad behavior.
Especially, I mean, not to say that age leads to wisdom, but when you have that prefrontal cortex, it gets cemented around 23 or 24. You look at, I do a lot of stuff with the military, and you see a kid come in, 17, 18, basic training. He can still change. She can still change. You get in a relationship at 27, 28, and you're trying to change that person. There's very little variance that can be made. There's very little you can do to change that person. I'm not saying to give up and say, but that's why people love redemption stories, because they're rare in reality. So don't think you're going to change that person, because the statistics show that that's just not the case.
That matters. And I have to say, I was never good at math and science in high school, but I'm a science person. I like statistics because they're very clear. And the patterns have already shown in the statistics of these types of people don't change. But we always want that emotional love story that we see of like, but I am a good woman and I got him to change. You think of every Hallmark movie plot, right?
Yeah.
That little Playboy, in comes the nerdy woman, or the anxiety-riddled, over-functioning woman comes in and they just balance each other out perfectly and he changes for her. We all want that fairy tale. But in reality, those types of men don't change. Abusers in general, anybody who's pathological especially, they're not changing. But how much do you think how much we want it to not be the case plays a factor in this?
Absolutely. It's all want. It's all desire. It's all, once again, you want the Hallmark movie where you come into the small town and the guy's working at the orchard and he just, whatever, it's around Oktoberfest. It's like we could come up and design our own Hallmark show right now, right? But what's the reality of that? And I truly think is that the online dating world, it's great. I don't know, you would probably know the percentages of the amount of relationships that start now with online dating. It might be over 50%, right?
It is.
It used to be like, oh, that's strange. Now it's like considered to be the norm. Is that though, I think you really need to get in a situation where you get face to face, you look someone in the eyes and you understand all three modalities of that communication. And also change up your profile pictures. Don't use the same profile picture, because those face scanning apps, and I would use those face scanning apps because I would put that in there, whoever the beau is that you're dating, because he may say, oh, I've never been on any online dating platform. You plug it in and you see 72 profiles. So that's going to hurt his, first impression there as far as honesty goes. But also just be careful about what you put out there online. Those breadcrumbs people can take advantage of. They can weaponize. And instead of having a carpet bomb, approaches on how they could potentially manipulate you, now you're giving them the key that kind of shows them how to unlock that. And it can be very targeted in their message. And we see that with dating scams. And then we also unfortunately see that with manipulators who are up to no good when it comes to females.
Yeah. Sneaky, I tell you. These guys are very skilled, and I agree. Now,
Mhm.
I want to always make this point. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on this because I say some of these things to clients or in videos that I make online. And so many people are like, no, 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 Lisa, you don't understand. My guy's not smart enough to be this skilled. He's not that calculating. He's not cunning. He's an idiot. Listen, I don't know that it's intelligence. I don't think that they all sit down and have this well thought out plan to manipulate. It's learned, I know, on their part, but it's natural. It's just happening. Do you see that it's not
Yeah.
always intelligence?
It's not. It's not an intelligence-driven thing. We're not talking about a Ponzi scheme here. All criminal behavior that I look at. So when I was a criminologist in grad school, we would study why do people commit crime, that type of stuff. So if you want to view manipulation, and sadly, some of this manipulation then turns into criminal activity, either through domestic violence or sexual assault, is you look at, it's a mathematical equation. It's need plus ability plus opportunity plus their justification, and that's times by stress. Okay, so that's the numerator. And the denominator is social control and the chances and consequences of them getting caught. Well, a lot of them don't think they're ever going to get caught because they can manipulate a situation. Some of their social bonds and social consciences are very problematic. So if they need something, you've given them the ability and the opportunity to provide it. It just takes stress added into that question, into that equation for them to act. So I think sometimes we overthink it and we think, once again, hey, my beau is not smart enough to be able to do this. This is an evolutionary drive where sex and or control is from an evolutionary perspective. So that is a constant. If you're giving them the opportunity, access is everything. I can't offend or commit any crime if I don't have access to you. That's why when it comes to the child world, I never have people do sleepovers. I say you should never have a sleepover. You're giving access to people that you don't truly know. And if you then allow them to have online access, whether it be with Roblox or other games, that's bringing the candy van into the house and allowing strangers to have access to your kids. So if you want to view it from that standpoint, the need is there. If you're giving the other person the opportunity and access, that's when you're opening yourself up to the problem.
Yeah, I so agree. And I mean, we need to be a little bit guarded, but I don't think anybody wants to operate in the world in this, constant fear. But if we are observing and vetting and standing back and looking at patterns, we're going to see better anyway. And that's huge.
Yep.
Shifting
Trust
a little
but
bit
verify.
here. Right. Oh, I love that phrase actually. Trust but verify. So chapter 9 of your book, Preparing for and Weathering the Storm, you talk about people that are trying to provoke this emotional reaction to gain the upper hand. It was just so God, that's such an abusive relationship. Tell me a little bit about how you see that happening. What do you see?
Yeah, so one of it's just strictly heart rate. Like our ability to assess credibility is so thrown off when our heart rate goes up. So some of the biggest studies on this show that your ability to detect deception, the biggest outlier is what your resting heart rate is. Anytime your resting heart rate gets over 70 or 80, now we have what's called cognitive overload, where it's almost like on our computer screen here is when we get more windows opened up and then our computer bogs down, that's what happens. And as a result of that, we start making rash decisions and we make decisions that are just based upon limited amounts of information, the easy way out, so to speak. So that's part of it is heart rate. Then you start throwing neurochemicals in there and now you have a significant problem. When you start throwing cortisol in there, the stress hormone, what do we do when our stress is up? Do we tend to stress eat? Do we tend to, we do a lot of things when we are emotional that we later I wish I wouldn't have done that. So whether it be oxytocin, cortisol, serotonin, these chemicals, when they're released, and then when they're released by somebody that has a goal, that's very, very problematic. There's tons of studies that Paul Zak has a great book called The Moral Molecule that just discusses how people can manipulate this. When they can get oxytocin and serotonin released from you, it can be manipulated at such a high level, whether it be from a handshake, a hug, or a spoken word. So we want to be, once again, we don't want to put fear out there. We don't want to be guarded. In my world, when I was with the Secret Service, I would love to have our protectee in a bubble and have nobody within 300 miles of them. That's just not how it works, obviously. but trust and verify. And if you're in an emotional state and it is not of the essence, meaning if you're walking to your car at night, if they're walking down an alley at night and you have a visceral response, trust it. Call 911, run for your car, whatever the case may be. But if you don't need to react that way, let that heart rate come down. Let those neurochemicals dissipate into the ether and then make a conscious decision.
That's hard.
Yeah.
When you're in a relationship, and especially when you're being provoked. Now, I think it's interesting because in a lot of abusive relationships, they provoke you so that you have a big emotional display, and then they're recording you or they're using it in some way as evidence that you're the problem, or to create this kind of like, we're both bad, we're both an issue here. And it's unfair because the reaction becomes the trial. Now we're going to not talk about what this person did to you. We're going to talk about your reaction to what they did. And it's crazy making, if nothing else. In high stakes conversations, why do you think the abuser or the criminal is trying to do that? What's the gain for them?
Many times what I saw, and once again, I'm talking from an interrogation standpoint, but this is a learned behavior and they've done it to set people off, to create a reaction. So, oh, hey, I'm not at fault here. That person did it. They did that bad thing, whether it be they killed somebody, shot somebody, whatever I was investigating. And by creating that reaction, it gets me off my game. Or once again, hey, I was trying to participate here, but this jerk here lost his mind. And so for me, when I see that type of behavior and it's performative, meaning somebody's aggressive, but they're not furrowing their brow. They're aggressive, but they're not clenching their fists. They're aggressive, but they're not blading their body. Things in which this is performative from a body language standpoint. I'm going to just let them play that out. I'm going to take a second and I'm not going to match it, because when you match it, that's when they win. So that's when you set the boundaries. I truly believe, hey, I'm not going to have this conversation right now. I want to have this conversation. I just don't want to do it right now. And if they are constantly pushing that boundary, there's a reason they're pushing that boundary. They want that reaction for you many times.
That is so important, because actually when you say that, it's so easy to say from two chairs, wherever we are in the world, to be like, just say, I'm not doing this right now. An abusive man will get right in your face and make you have the conversation right now. I think even if you get baited into it, you have to at some point go, why was that so important for that person to have that conversation with me in a moment where I asked for space? What were they trying to gain by me not being regulated?
Yeah, that they're being emotionally inconsistent. Let's say whatever you're questioning them about that caused that reaction, you have to sit there and say, was that a fair question that I asked them? If that was a fair question that I asked them and I get that reaction, that means there's something deeper here. That's where I need to dig deeper as to why they caused that reaction. They are covering up for something or trying to get me off the scent, so to speak. I've just seen it hundreds of times in the criminal realm, and in a relationship realm. I think when you see that, once again, set the boundary. If you're wanting to be in a relationship with somebody, it should be fair to say, look, I want to have this conversation. I just don't want to do it right now. If we would do a lot of search warrants at 6 a.m. We'd do a lot at 6 p.m. When I would do them at 6 a.m, it was always problematic to obtain information because, there's people in the house. They may lose face in front of their kids or from their significant other. They're just waking up. People don't like to have conversations early in the morning or late at night. 10 o'clock in the morning and 2 o'clock in the afternoon are the best time to have good, sensitive communications. So if I was ever in a situation where I didn't want to have a conversation at a certain time, I would just try to, as best I could, put it off for another time. And some people say, well, that's nice, Brad, but you can't do it. Why? Is this a life or death situation? Well, it's just he wants to have he wants to have the conversation at another time, or he doesn't want to have it another time. He wants to have it now. Set those boundaries, and their reaction to the boundaries, I think, especially early in a relationship, is what is going to be so telling.
I agree so much, and especially early, because I think, my brain automatically goes to like, somebody's in this 7 years. She already knows that if you don't have the conversation when he wants to, he's going to punish you in some way, stonewall you for days, and make it feel urgent for you. His desire to have the conversation will outweigh anything. That's after conditioning happens. So the goal, of course, is to not get into a marriage like this and sort of back up and do the vetting in the beginning. But when you find yourself years in, just notice these things. And I want people to also use some of this knowledge to go, yeah, this is abuse. This is a good question. Why is it so urgent? that I have to have this conversation right at this moment. You're always giving in to their needs. And I think women feel very responsible for their own safety, even emotional safety, but to give in so that you can make yourself feel safer. And it's hard because they're pulling you into their frame, and then you're defending your tone, your tears, your whatever, you're defending why you're angry, why you ask the question, why you don't want to have the conversation right now. And the original abuse disappears, like the original crime disappears. And they're talking about the angry interrogation officer in some way.
Yeah. No, absolutely. They're thinking about the way it went down, the procedure. They're not thinking about did it actually take place. What's a good defense attorney do? And I don't mean this as somebody that does a DUI, they should be punished for that. But what is it a lot of times the DUI attorneys do? They focus on how the breathalyzer was managed, how this was happening. Not that their client was drinking or not drinking. They're trying to find an out. Okay, so that's what defense attorneys do, and they have a job to do, right? They want to make sure that we as investigators do the right thing. But they're looking at the technicalities. And a lot of abusers are having you focus on the technicalities that are trying to get them off instead of the original behavior that led to this situation.
Yeah. That's why the arguments are so circular. They put you in this double bind where no matter what direction you try to take the conversation and you're wrong this way, you're wrong that way. And then you're like, forget it. And you just give up altogether, which investigators can't do, of course, because you have an investigation to run. But I feel like we're the same. We should be like, hey, I haven't completed my investigation.
Yeah, correct. And it's tough to do, especially the longer you're in that relationship. You got kids in the situation. So very, very difficult. So that's why it's so important that first couple months where we choose correctly. All right. And I think that's when it's easier to see. Once again, by setting those boundaries and seeing those reactions and being able to walk away at that time before you're too pot committed.
Yeah. Hindsight's 20/20, as they say, right? So one thing that I think is so interesting is, these arguments, if we want to have a conversation, but we want to have it when we're regulated, what is the point of this conversation? And I'm telling you, for women in abusive relationships, it's accountability. I want this man to admit what he did. And this is chapter 14 of your book, which again, people have got to go out and get this book, but getting them to admit it. You write that the hardest part of uncovering deception is not just spotting the lie, but getting the person to admit the truth.
Yeah.
And I think people's, when they're confronted, the natural instinct, if you're lying, especially, or doing something bad, is to resist, deny, rationalize, whatever. But this is not a matter of getting women to interrogate men into accountability or interrogate abusers because A, that's dangerous. Don't anybody apply these tactics if you're afraid physically. But how can women do that and or let go of needing that? Because again, prosecuting a crime is one thing, but in these relationships, you can't. That's not how it works. But we're not maybe going to get the admission. But I do want them to understand some of the tactics and the denial and rationalization and why that's happening.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. So 2 ways to kind of unpack that is that many abusers are also very good liars. And when I say good liars is they look you in the eyes, which is not statistically backed as far as being deceptive or not. Actually, a lot of liars will look at you with these soft puppy dog eyes, right? And this is not backed by science. And there's a lot of people that are they're telling you the truth, but they look deceptive because of what we've been taught. What is deception? So the best thing for me first is just a real quick riff on detection of deception is I want to ask people questions in which they answer yes or no questions. That's the best way to get to the truth is that I'm going to ask you something in which you have to answer yes or no. Because if you can take me wherever you want to take me and you can tell me a long, tall tale, you can omit whatever you choose to omit and you can accentuate whatever you want to accentuate. And you can tell me things in which are truthful statements as part of that open-ended statement. But if I say something that's yes or no, it is going to force them. And what happens many times is you're going to get a slight delay. So you're going to get yes, yes, no. And you're going to get no with an upward inflection many times. So it's not no with an exclamation point. It's no. Those are 2 different no's. That's when I ask my daughter, did you clean your room? Yes. Okay, that's a problem. She didn't clean her room. Or liars lie specifically. Hey, Sydney, did you get all your homework done? I got all my math homework done. Well, that sounds to me like there's some other homework that needs to be done. And so little things like that, equivocating statements, using ly statements, usually, normally, typically, those are the types of things that I want you to look at. And it's not 100%, but think of it as a check engine light where you know what? Something's not right there. So let's say there could be a text message that we want to look at, whatever the case may be, and we feel as if our significant other is not being truthful with us. So how do we get them to, quote unquote, give us the evidence? That's what's very, very hard. Sometimes, first off, understand, it's very difficult to get the evidence, and it may be staring you in the face. So trust the preponderance of the evidence instead of just searching for the confession. But I want to be their buddy. I want to give them an off-ramp. The situation is everybody needs to save face. Why do we have what's going on in Ukraine right now with Russia? Well, it's very hard for Putin to save face because if he walks away, it says, I did all this for vain, all these millions of people died for no reason, and he's probably going to get overthrown. So we have to give people an off-ramp. So my analogy I use in the book is called Be Their Buddy, and it's blame outside forces. It's understand but don't agree. We understand it does not mean agreement. Diminish the impact but not the culpability. So you made a mistake, you screwed up, but it's not the end of the world, is a fair statement. So I want to be their buddy. I want to diminish impact, and I want to focus on the why and not the what. So I may, if it's a relationship issue, be like, look, we all make mistakes. There's no perfect people. I just want, when we're moving forward here, I just want you to be perfectly honest with me. Because if you made a mistake in the past and that's in the rearview mirror, I want to focus on the windshield moving forward because you got to understand the situation I'm in. So by doing that, you're saying, I'm not judging you, all right? We're almost that Catholic priest where we're creating a private environment where we're not around their friends. We don't have our phones. We're ventrally fronted. So we're showing, I'm here to listen. We're leaning forward slightly. We're giving them soft eyes. We're not giving that contempt look. And we're coming off like that Catholic priest. If in the confessional, in the Catholic faith, if there was one of these fancy microphones in the confessional, no one would talk. If when you were talking to them, the priest was looking at, or you could look at the priest, that would shut down communication. If you said one thing and the priest immediately said, really? Why did you do that? Very judgment oriented, that would be problematic. So it is hard. You're going to have to bite your tongue. When I'm talking to a child molester or a murderer and I'm being their buddy and I'm rationalizing, projecting, and minimizing the behavior, it's very tough. But what's my goal? To get a clear picture of what transpired. And if you're in a relationship where something has happened and you're trying to get closure on it and you're trying to get more information on it, think of, how would a Catholic priest talk to your significant other in order to obtain that confession? It wouldn't be like you see in the movies with that, the light over the top and pointing fingers at them. You'd be like, look, you made a mistake. It is what it is. But in order to move forward, I got to understand that I can trust you moving forward. In order to do that, I got to go backwards a couple pages and understand what led to this. And if you do it, if you do that, you'd be surprised at how many people will tell you, I've had people admit to mass murder, the most horrific things on the planet, and I had nothing in common with them. But what is the number one thing that people don't have right now? Your attention. It's the most valuable resource on the planet. We're sucked into the virtual world. We're looking at our phones. If I can ventrally front and I can look at somebody in their face with undivided attention and I can say, just talk to me, that is priceless. And if you do that, one, you're going to be better in relationships, but you're also going to be better in situations in which somebody made a mistake and they stepped in it, and you're providing them an opportunity to explain the why.
I love that. It's so interesting, because I immediately picture they're always making excuses. So kind of help them make the excuses,
100%.
like, okay, I wasn't sleeping with you as often as I should have. I know I'm failing as a wife. Tell me what happened. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. Let's do this. Let's just tell me. I just need honesty. If you kind of own that, just one thing I'll say is like, don't actually step into that frame. You're stepping into that to get the evidence, but then you need to do something with the evidence, not stay there and continue to believe that. That's hard, but important.
Yeah, I mean, it's the last puzzle piece that you're looking for, right? And now you've got a clear, you've got all the who, what, when, where, whys, and now you can make an informed decision. And at that point, that's free will. But now you have all the information that you need. And I always love it, and I think juries love it, when somebody says, here's what I did, and here's why I did it. Now, if you don't have that, at a certain point, I got these text messages, I've got this, I get this, I think he's cheating on me. That's when you got to sit there and say, that's not my gut saying this. That's what any rational person would say this. Meaning, if I wrote this down, okay, he got this text from this female, I saw him here, he said this, we haven't had relations for this amount of time, whatever it is, and you throw that in, you did one of those I know back in the day, we do those plus minus little ledgers on should I make this decision or not. Take your emotions out of it and just put those things down here and say, if I was a prosecutor and I was prosecuting this case, would my husband, boyfriend, whatever the case, would he be guilty of doing this act with a jury or in a civil jury, preponderance of evidence? And if your answer and any normal person's answer would be, oh, yeah, then you need to sit there and say, I don't need a confession. But if you do, be their buddy.
Yeah. I'm an advocate for not needing the confession because more often than not, in a relationship, because it's interesting, again, like evidence and the legal system and that, innocent until proven guilty. I get it. That's not the same in a relationship. It's like you need the evidence because your brain tells you you have to have it, or he's telling you if you don't have concrete evidence, if you don't have a video of him doing it, then it never happened. But I think this repeated denial is interesting. What do you think repeated denial or evasion can actually tell us even without that confession?
Well, I mean, it's tough to say, not knowing the specific circumstances, but, once again, best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. How many points of reference do you need before you sit there and say, and that's the problem. That's what love is clouding. That's what the relationship is clouding. It's staring you in the face. And I know I've talked to so many of my friends and outwardly I'm like, I can't believe he can't see these signs, right? So you almost have to get outside yourself and almost view it from someone else's perspective because it's perception versus perspective, right? I know you mentioned perspective earlier, is that we have a perception of things, but what's more valuable is another person's perspective. Theirs, our significant others. But in this sense, what was someone else's perspective that was outwardly looking at this situation? Would they sit there and go, oh yeah, he's doing this bad thing. He's a narcissist. He's manipulating you. Or worse, he's cheating on you. He's abusing you. If you look at it from someone else's perspective, what would it show? And it's tough to get into other people's shoes, but it's a nice little thought exercise. And I always do it before I go talk to bad guys because I want to talk to them from their why. And if I talk to them from their why, it almost becomes an echo in their own head and it allows them to come forward with those words of why they did what they did. Versus if I come from my perspective, I'm pissed. I'm upset. I'm emotional. And it makes it a lot easier for them to just keep denying.
Yeah, it's hard. I'm so big on emotional regulate, take a deep breath, because if you go into it hot, if you go into all these things angry or you go into it calm and then this person can wind you up, it's like you're going to lose what the goal is. So we don't need confessions in abusive relationships. I know, well, you don't need them in the law either. You just need enough evidence to prosecute, but the confession is not the thing. Sometimes we just need to trust ourselves. But I feel like we're telling women in so many cases, trust your gut, but then he's telling you you're making it up. You're just insecure because your last boyfriend cheated on you. I'm not cheating on you. You're traumatized. You're crazy. You're dramatic. And you lose touch with reality. I think confusion in a relationship is actually a perfect sign that something's wrong. Could be abuse, but that something is wrong. Because in healthy relationships, you can be mad at your husband and not confused about whether or not he's abusing you. You can just have a disagreement.
And it's similar to when you ask people and they give you the truth. So when something happens, you don't have to have a very good memory to tell the truth. Mark Twain said that a long time ago, is that it's just one reel of film that people are speaking. But when somebody's telling a lie, they have to create an alternate truth. They have to sit there and say, is it believable? Then they have to say, with this new truth, is there any way that she could determine if that's not truthful? There's so much mental processing going on there. That's why, as you said, you're sitting there taking a step back going, this just doesn't make sense, right? Because truthful people do not talk like that. And that's almost like the question you need to ask yourself is like, as an outside observer, does this make sense? And once you get your emotions out of the way, you're gonna get a much clearer decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you trust your gut instinct?
Only when it comes to personal situations, because I tell the story about the Chihuahua and the Pit Bull as well, is that my partner Ryan and I were doing a search warrant and we came into a house and we came into the kitchen and there was a Pit Bull and there was a Chihuahua. And most people would say, well, what's gonna hurt you? Well, it's a mad, bad, very, what society says is a, scary animal in the Pit Bull. And that's just a little Chihuahua. It's a little 6-pound animal, right? So my front sight focus of my firearm, I don't want to shoot an animal, was on the Pit Bull. What happens? The Chihuahua comes around behind me, jumps up and grabs me by the testicles. And my partner's laughing. I think the bad guy in the room is laughing. I've got a holster up, got to secure it thanks to the Duluth Trading Company for their fire hose material pants. I'm speaking in the octave that I'm speaking to you now as a result of that. But I had put horns and halos, affixed them too quickly to the wrong thing. So you do trust them in those situations because if you think about it, If I would have been worried about the Chihuahua, but the pit bull would have turned on me, it wouldn't have mattered about the fabric of my pants. I would have had a big problem if that would have been the pit bull. So trust it when your safety, your security of you or your family is on the line, because that's what it was meant for. We didn't have social media 200,000 years ago, all right, to protect our tribe. Now biases are so prevalent with what's out there, is that what I want you to do is, let's almost skew when we say trust our gut. I do want to trust it in the negative, but I don't want and I'm dating myself here, but the Eddie Haskell effect to kind of kick in here, where we have someone, especially early on in a relationship, we put that halo on them too quickly. And then the affinity bias, cognitive bias, all that kicks in, and it's so difficult to overcome that. And they almost have to do so many negative things before we finally start believing it. So let's be vanilla a little bit. Let's be Switzerland when it comes to throwing out horns and halos too quickly, especially in our personal relationships when we don't have to. Trust your gut when your life depends on it.
I love that. Such good advice. And to me, in an abusive relationship, our lives are always dependent on this, even when you're not being physically harmed or physically threatened, because this is your life. We live one life, and being stuck and trapped in an abusive relationship is a form of dying in so many ways, not to be dramatic, but it really, you get so stuck and your life is wasting away with a bad person that does nothing but hurt you fundamentally. We want to get out of these relationships. There's so much good information to take from this conversation and from your book, Tell Me Everything. Where can people get your book?
Sure, they can get it on Simon & Schuster. It's also, most people order books now on Amazon, so they can get it on Amazon, or they can go to my website at bradleybeeler.com. Also on the socials at Brad Beeler 1865. That was the year the Secret Service was founded. So on Instagram and also on LinkedIn at that moniker. So I like to put a lot of content out there. So if I can help you in any way, please feel free to reach out.
That is phenomenal. I think really what I'm taking from this conversation is noticing matters and information matters, your gut. Notice their reactions. Definitely be paying attention to patterns. And if they're evading things, trust your gut when it really matters. We don't need courtroom level proof because you're the investigator, not us. We're just trying to understand our own lives and our own relationships much better. So he might control the story, but you can always return back to the pattern. So thank you so much for being here. It was absolutely such a great conversation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity, Lisa.